So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the third seminar of the seminar series on the Human Trafficking Initiative at SAIS. Tonight we host Filippo Spiezia, who is the Italian member at Eurojust, and tonight he will be presenting us the most recent publication of his, which concerns criminal threats and EU response. The moderator of tonight's event is Alexandra Malangone, and I am therefore leaving the floor to her. I want to express gratitude to both of you. This is going to be a very interesting seminar, and I look forward to the debate which will follow. Thank you both, and Alexandra, the floor is yours. I know you will introduce Dr. Spiezia in the best way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you so much, Dr. Spiezia, for being with us tonight. We have changed several times the date, but we managed. So we are very, very pleased that you're with us. And I also want to express gratitude to your colleague and dear friend, Barbara Benzi, who also facilitated your participation today. So I am sure that everybody who has connected tonight has acquainted themselves about you and about your bio, but let me just very briefly mention that you were appointed national member for Italy in Eurojust in January 2016 and was also elected vice president of Eurojust in December 2017, exercising your mandate until December 2020. And the National Directorate, where you served as a Deputy National Member for Italy at Eurojust between 2008 and 2012. And then you left Eurojust to join Anti-Mafia and Anti-Terrorism National Directorate in Italy, for which you coordinated several investigations of organized crime and terrorism. And you have academic experience also including lecturing in several Italian universities and publishing your work in scientific magazines as well. You were awarded Falcone and Borsellino Prize in 2003 for your legal textbook on trafficking and exploitation of human beings, and also got important recognition for your career in 2018 when you were awarded with the 23rd prize Paolo Borsellino. So we're very, very pleased to have you tonight to present this book, which I have here with me. I have been through many times. I have highlighted many times. I go back to it many times. I'm very, very happy that you will be here with us tonight presenting this piece of work. So the floor is yours, Dr. Spiezia.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malangone. It's a pleasure, a big honor for me to stay with you all and I feel the need, first of all, to present my apologies because I was forced to postpone my participation to this event, but just was thinking when you introduced myself that Eurojust to some extent can be considered a sort of international Red Cross. We always need to support our national authorities whenever it's urgent, when they need our assistance, support for coordinating investigations in complex cases. That's why I was forced also to ask you, please consider that I'm not available this time, and then we need to go for another date. That's true. But not all I would say there is also a positive side effect of this postponement, because this discussion today comes quite appropriate because this is a time also of changing again the legal framework of Eurojust. As you said, I'm a national member for Italy since 2016. I've already assisted to some important changes in our legal framework, because in 2018, Eurojust was transformed in an EU agency. I'm not sure that all the participants are aware of what Eurojust is, but in short, we can say that Eurojust is the EU agency in charge of coordinating or supporting the coordination of investigations and the Judicial Cooperation Center in relation to complex cross-border cases, cross-border investigations. So we basically are able, with our skill, expertise and tools, to enhance the judicial response to criminal threats which present this cross-border dimension. And why this discussion today comes very appropriate in terms of timing, because after this first transformation in December 2021, at the end of the previous year, the Commission tabled a new proposal for changing again the Eurojust regulation for introducing new let's say competence in relation to the terrorism threats, in order to give a more solid legal basis for this tool that we are already using at the practical level, which is called the Counter-Terrorism Register. It's the first judicial register at the EU level, where we are able to collect together in a systematic way information for terrorism crime transmitted to us by our national correspondent. Then, through this register, we are able to match this information, to find the links, and also, of course, to provide appropriate feedback to national authorities and to start new investigations if it's the case, or to better coordinate the investigation. But now it's again, it's a time for changing. That's why when you talk about this EU area of freedom, security, and justice, is something always in development. Sometimes the situation seems to be very stable, so no novelty for quite a long time, so for several years. Then suddenly you assist to changes and transformation. And as in our history, EU history, transformation are brought about by historical events, by situation of emergency situations, like is this now aggression from Russia to Ukraine. The current war situation is also requesting possible new role for Eurojust, for collecting and keeping and preserving and freezing the evidence collected in war zones, especially in Ukraine, where the colleagues from Ukraine, from the General Prosecutor, are not able, due to the current situation, to preserve such evidence, to analyze, and also to offer for national jurisdictions. You know that due to the universal principle of jurisdiction, several jurisdictions have been activated in several EU member states for war crimes, crime against humanity, even for genocide. And in addition, there is also the jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. So the Commission has thought that probably the only place where at the EU level we can collect in a systematic way, preserve such evidence, is Eurojust. But this requires a change in our legal framework. So you see that the fact that today we are having such discussion at such meeting is not bad at all, because I can also inform you about these last developments. We will see what happens. I think that this change will be for sure will be implemented, will be adopted very soon by the EU legislator, and very soon we will confront it from the operational point of view with the new situation. I know that one of the topics of your interest today is especially the THB, the traffic of human beings, which it's one of priority for Eurojust and for you. And this is also one of the topic that I have illustrated in my essay, my book, my law book. The idea to write just two words for my book. I don't want to speak longer for the book, because I think that the best way for you is to, if you consider that it deserves your attention, is to read the book, and then you can also provide me with your feedback. It was the idea. I felt the duty to make a testimony about my commitment at EU level. In my position of national member for Italy at the Eurojust, but also as a member of this organization, I saw a lot of things. I see also I see also evolution of criminal threats. For example, talking about terrorism, but not only, cybercrime, organized crime, especially organized crime made in Italy, let's say the crimes committed by mafia groups. I see a lot of evolution in this, in in the patterns of criminal groups, but also an evolution in the type of answer provided by the institutions and national institutions, national authorities. But also I saw also some constraints, some limit in our actions, some obstacles, some depending from legal issues, other depending on the lack of goodwill from national authorities. And I took the opportunity, and also I feel the duty, civil duty, and also the judicial duty as a member of this organization to present also the limit of our actions, and also relaunch the action by indicating, in my view, which could be fostered, which could be enhanced the system. So even some potential solutions. And happy to see that some of the ideas that I presented in this book are already included in the new strategic documents adopted by the EU Commission, talking, for example, of smuggling of migrants, also talking about this idea of institutionalization of the counterterrorism register. It is reported in the new EU strategy. So happy to contribute, but this is also a book where I think, and I hope that I used some quite basic language expression. This means that this book is not meant necessarily for scholars, for judicial experts, for law enforcement, but is intended also for society, for people who in general should know more about what Eurojust and about what the EU institutions, not only Eurojust, do for the security of EU citizens, and they need also to consider that EU is not only institutions are not only concerned for the EU revenue or incomes for the fiscal compact or other economic concern, but the EU institutions are ready to take actions for the security of EU citizens. This is I would say these are the main ideas supporting this effort from my side. In relation to THB, I think that it's important to, when we analyze the criminal phenomenon, to consider this as a complex phenomenon. You are an expert and you know a lot of things about THB. I think that we can underline only some key concepts about THB, which are relevant in order to evaluate the type of response which has been put in place by the institutions at the international level, at EU level, and also to see if there is a room for improving the system. And again, this discussion today comes very appropriate in terms of timing, because this is also timing for reviewing the directive of 2011 against THB, the first criminal directive adopted under the Lisbon Treaty. It's under revision. There are the inputs and auspices from the EU Parliament to reconsider some of the aspects of this directive, and even Eurojust has been requested to provide the assessment of the current directive. And I think it's important also to inform you about our evaluation of these legal instruments. So key elements, key concept of this phenomenon. For sure, this is a phenomenon where a central role is played by organized criminal groups. This is the reason why Eurojust is deeply involved in the investigations, coordination investigation, judicial cooperation procedures concerning THB. From the side of demand, as any type, I used to say to students, to my colleagues, that every criminal phenomenon can be seen in terms of economic activity. So from the side of demand, we have a demand of some performance, or let's say activities. Organized groups operated on the basis of the economic principle of the demand of their activities, and demands, unfortunately, is driven by the request of people, ordinary people, people of our society, which are seeking different form of exploitation of people in a vulnerable situation. Think, for example, to the sexual exploitation, to the exploitation of workers. Any type of THB or traffic human beings should be seen in terms that respond to a demand of services from the society, from some specific part of society. All these forms of exploitation have in common a vision and approach toward human being and as a thing, human beings as a res, in order to use Roman words, forgetting the real essence of human beings as a people with dignity, with human rights. And that's why THB is a gross violation of human rights, of the dignity of people. And that's why also sometimes you see in the doctrine to definition of THB as a modern form of slavery. When we say this, it's not intended to be in a technical way, because slavery, in terms of crime, we have the crime of slavery in Italian legislation, but not only in Italian criminal code, also in other legislation, represent part of the effect of THB to reduce people in a slave condition. But in technical terms, THB requires, you know, recruitment, transportation of people. So there is always this dimension of the movement of people behind the THB. So in technical terms, it's not exactly the same, but from the conceptual point of view, it's correct to say that THB is a modern form of slavery. So it's a profit-driven criminal activity, as we said, in relation to all this form of criminality, all this form of exploitation of people. And from the side of the offer, who is offering these services? Who is exploiting people? Organized crime, as we said, organized criminal group. So there is a clear international dimension, because all these criminal groups, according to Eurojust experience, but I can also add and refer to my previous experience in the National Anti-Mafia Bureau, the international dimension is always present in all the activities carried out by these criminal networks. And this is a factor of complexity. We are confronted with the criminal groups where you can have members in a leading position in one member state or even abroad in third country, and you have also other criminal structure in other member states. So this requires strong cooperation, a strong relationship with our partners, but also require legal solution back, because if you have different judicial authorities taking into consideration these activities, conducting their investigations, you need to coordinate, you need also to solve question and preventing conflict of jurisdiction. And the international dimension is also underlined by the fact that these criminal groups are polycrimes group. They are often involved in other criminal activity like money laundering, corruption, migrant smuggling. This is clearly documented by Eurojust statistics, Eurojust experience in this field, because when you will look to the statistics or the cases, operational cases at Eurojust, we see that always we register cases not only for THB as such plus organized crime, but also for money laundering or other serious criminal activity, like also drug trafficking. So this transborder crime and transnational crime has an impact on the type of judicial response. And it's a layer of difficulty that also hamper the response from our side. Another feature, feature that we can easily recognize in the patterns of criminal groups is their capacity to adapt to different situations, different scenarios, different emergency situations, and also to the legal reaction. The COVID-19 pandemic is just a more recent example how traffickers increasingly are able to adapt their modus operandi. And this is clearly been seen, can clearly be seen if you look to the digital space. Digital space is the new arena where criminal groups operate for recruitment of victims, for offering services of the victims, for exploiting the victims. And technology as now, I would say, one of the predominant features, characteristic of modern criminality. This is one of the repeated message that I underline in my book, where we have these three words which always to be considered when you analyze organized criminal group. They international dimension, the fact that they operate in a structured way in terms of criminal network, and also this digital dimension, which again is a reason of additional complexity for law enforcement community in general terms. So digital era now means also possibility for criminal groups to use encrypted communications. So it's not only a way to exploit victims, but also it's another opportunity that they use in order to communicate each other, to organize criminal activity. And this is a big difficulty for the law enforcement community. We are having quite good success in relation to some criminal investigations. I'm not aware if you already heard about Encrochat case, which is a joint investigation team where some national authorities have been able to decrypt some important relevant communications. I would say hundreds of thousands of communications relevant for the reconstruction of the criminal chain. So this means that if we make a common efforts, then we also are able to respond in an appropriate way to all these evolving patterns, to this new dimension of the criminality. So in short, these are the main features of the criminal phenomena. In addition, you have to consider all the patterns concerning the victims. The victims, you know that the majority of victims are women and children. Half of victims have been identified in not EU country. The majority of the traffickers in EU and are EU citizens. So this means also that the THB shall be seen not only as a gross violation of new fundamental rights, but also as a form of gender-based violence, rooted in gender inequalities, though where the discrepancies of social conditions, the inequalities, the vulnerability of women and children are unfortunately factors which facilitate this type of criminality. I think that there is also a difficulty to have clear and reliable statistics in the number of victims. This is related to the difficulty to identify victims. This is one of the recurrent difficulties of the law enforcement community, the proper and timely identification of victims, but also there is also a problems in the communication of data from the national authorities to the central hub, to the Commission, to the EU institutions. But irrespective of different figures that we have in this respect, we can easily recognize that we are confronted with a criminal phenomenon which present a big magnitude in terms of criminal activity and number of victims. So we also can say that, of course, we need to be positive because over the years, progress have been made in this respect. I remember when I started my judicial activity as a public prosecutor in Salerno. In 1996, I started the first investigation for situations which are more or less comparable to THB, or even a worse situation of slavery. And it was very difficult to find and to get cooperation from abroad, from foreign authorities. In that case, I was quite lucky, because Italy has quite, I would say, natural attitude of cooperation with the Albanian authorities. So it was not impossible to get a response and cooperation from the Albanian authorities. But for the rest, it was very difficult. For the rest, it's a common experience to national prosecutors to receive at the time response for after a long time, when even when the prosecution, the trial was concluded. So we can say that after 20 years, situation now is much better. Now we can rely on judicial cooperation instruments based on the principle of mutual recognition. We can rely on EU institutions like Europol, like Eurojust. Even the level of mutual trust among the national authorities at EU level has got a net improvement, net increase of it. But despite the progress achieved, traffic of human beings remain a serious threat and a big challenge for the EU community. This is a repeated mantra that we find in the EU documents, even in their recent EU strategy for the last, it was adopted last year, the new anti-trafficking strategy, where one of the main points, the key points underlined by the EU anti-traffic coordinator and by the EU policymaker is that we, in comparison to the number of victims, although we don't have precise figures of the victims, the number of prosecution and conviction remain quite low. I can agree to this conclusion if we refer to number of convictions, because we analyzed this figure also at Eurojust level. Just to give you some number, for the period of 2015-2016, THB investigation referred to Eurojust were only 172, with reported conviction on 1,927 in total for only these 2 years. In respect to the number of victims registered for those years, corresponding to 20,000, almost 20,000 victims. But if you refer, and if we make a comparison to number of investigations, this is my remark, these figures are not bad at all, because the idea of having investigation only for one victim does not respond to reality. Normally, you have an investigation for several victims. So the number of investigations is quite acceptable, in my humble opinion. What we are missing is a proportionate number in terms of conviction. And this reflects a difficulty, a legal difficulty, and also judicial difficulty. Legal difficulty for the getting a full recognition before the court of the result of the investigations, but this also is a consequence of consistent divergences at the in the national legislation concerning THB. And in addition, it's for sure an element in common with a lot of cases reported to Eurojust, the fact that the national authorities refer the case to central agencies like Europol, Eurojust, not in a systematic way. They are not using the same patterns that are using, for example, for international drug trafficking or money laundering or fraud. They are recurring to these central EU institutions only when they are confronted with some difficulties. in judicial cooperation procedure or in the coordination of the investigations. And this is not the approach that we suggest. The approach we suggest is the early referral of the information of the case at EU level, because in these terms, in this way, we could be able to help in a better and efficient, more efficient way our national authorities. First, by identifying appropriate links in relation to different investigations, and then also to organize a different response. Because if the criminal networks are organized and they pursue a criminal strategy, we need to respond with a EU strategy, a strategy which is not only the reaction conceived at national level, but a reaction which try to reconstruct it, to target all the criminal chains. Sometimes the response is only limited to a part of the members, part of the criminal networks, only those operating in one single jurisdiction, but the main, I would say, cell, the main criminal group remain unaffected and continues to operate in other jurisdiction, in other member states. I can bring you, I would say, hundreds of examples in this direction. That's why coordinating efforts, coordinating investigations from the beginning, sharing information with Europol, with Eurojust remain vital in this respect. But this is more related to the operational level. Thanks to our quite relevant experience in trafficking human beings, we have been able also to analyze legal obstacles which can be overcome, which require a different solution, a solution not only at operational level, but also at legal level. I want to mention for presenting you this general expertise about THB from Eurojust perspective, the report on trafficking human beings we published in 2021. I don't know if you are aware of this report, but it is available on the website. We analyze several cases registered at Eurojust in the period 2017-2020. One of the most important recommendations from our side that you can read in this report is the early involvement of Eurojust and Europol, of all actors involved, as a part of the obligation to respect the right of victims of human trafficking. That's why we think that the first innovation that maybe the legislator can take into consideration in the modification of the changes in the anti-trafficking directive is exactly the need to better underline the role that Eurojust and Europol can play in investigations for THB. You know that the role of Europol and Eurojust is mentioned in the current anti-trafficking directive only in the preamble, in the recital 5. But you know that from practitioners and also from legislators, the referral, yes, can guide the interpretation, can be useful for the interpretation, but in terms of impact on the legislation, it's much better to underline this role in terms of specific provisions, and that's why we suggested to change this provision to include expressly in the new provisions, ideally in the new text, an express reference to Eurojust and Europol. Another problem that we have noticed by analyzing our casework is the lack of a clear EU definition of the concept of exploitation. In this respect, allow me to refer to the Italian experience where we consider THB in relation to labor exploitation only when we have also other elements of THB. One of the most recent cases of Moldavian women transported in Italy and prosecuted by PPO Potenza, supported by Eurojust, demonstrated that the people coming from Moldova were exploited, were transported in Italy. ID passport and documents were destroyed and then were exploited for working purposes. But it was not only the elements of the very poor conditions of the exploitation for their employment in the very work sector, but also other elements of THB were taken into consideration. This is not the same for other legislation. For example, in Romanian legislation, we discovered that you can have a THB only when you are employing people not respecting the general standard that need to be respected for the employment in different working sector. So we need a more clear definition of clear indicators of the concept of exploitation at EU level. And I just presented one example where this problem was reported and was found. Another important point in relation to the legal definition concerning forced marriages, which according to our casework could be one of the possible forms of exploitation of victims. And allow me also to remember that Eurojust in 2020 issued a report on national legislation on Eurojust casework on sham marriages. But this is not always the same from a legal point of view in all EU jurisdictions. And this is for sure a repeated, recurrent difficulty from our colleagues at home. And another point, which in our opinion deserve a different consideration from legislator, is the penalties currently foreseen in Article 4 of the Anti-Trafficking Directive. In this respect, we think that we should move by a general consideration of penalties which can be considered dissuasive, proportionate, and effective to a situation where we should foresee or should read in the legal text the minimum legal requirement, the minimum threshold for the penalties, which should be able to allow national authorities to use special investigative techniques, the same that we are using for combating organized crime and for all the cross-border activities. And in addition, and this is a point which is very close to me, is the need to have specific aggravated circumstances for the case where criminal networks are committing traffic offense by using digital technologies. Digital technologies represent an additional difficulties for law enforcement, can improve the benefits for criminal groups. So we don't see the reason why this situation should not be considered by the EU legislator in terms of aggravating circumstances, like we had also in other criminal areas. Another important, and I'm going to conclude this part, another important recommendation from Eurojust perspective is to highlight the importance to initiate always a sort of mandatory message to initiate financial investigation in every THB crimes. If we affirm, and this is true, that THB is a criminal activity driven by the profit, we need to counterbalance this by imposing to the national investigations the use of freezing and confiscation as indispensable tools to counter the criminal networks engaged in this type of criminal activity. The recommendation from Eurojust side are also related to need to increase and to better specify the jurisdiction, the enlargement of jurisdiction. Any criminal activity should not find impunity. And in order to avoid impunity, we need to expand the jurisdictions by basing jurisdiction to clear fundamental legal criteria. But this will not prevent situation of a conflict of jurisdictions, and that's why we have also proposed to have a specific provisions for preventing conflict of jurisdiction by taking into consideration the condition of the victims. This condition of victims should be emphasized in this new instruments, hopefully. This concerning the new the possible reformation of THB directive. Other considerations that I would like to share with you are related to the current commitment of Eurojust, also as a consequence of the Ukrainian situation. As a consequence of the Ukrainian situation, we know that after the 13th of March, approximately 2,500 people have been evacuated. We are speaking about orphans. We are speaking about 1,000, I would say millions now of Ukrainian people, which have moved by their home country. And they are seeking protection. They are seeking possibility to escape from the war. Many stakeholders, civil society, international organizations have launched, have raised concern regarding potential cases of THB or trafficking human beings for sexual and labor exploitation in relation to this tragedy. This is a human tragedy where, and this will not be the first case where criminal groups try to exploit this tragic situation. Especially in relation to children and women. The situation is evolving very quickly, as you know. We already started some actions. I am aware that different actions have been undertaken at the national level in order to raise awareness of these potential problems of new THB forms and exploitation of Ukrainian citizens at EU level. You are also aware that on the 4th of March 2022, the Council adopted also the Temporary Protection Directive, which grants temporary protection for Ukrainian citizens, but this is not enough. This is not enough because we already have got information that criminal groups are already active and try to exploit the situation. Especially, I would say, in relation to this digital dimension. The analysis of online traffic shows that there are already attempts to get information of Ukrainian people, personal information, in order to create false opportunities for them of protection, in order to invite them. There are a lot of attempts in order to, with just the pretext to offer assistance. Instead, it's just an action in order to recruit online Ukrainians, especially women and even children. We are confronted with this evolving situation. I already brought to the attention of the college at Eurojust level this situation. You know that the anti-traffic coordinator organized already a meeting with different stakeholders. Now we are taking another further action, which is to activate, to induce our national authorities to have a more proactive monitoring of the social networks, more proactive monitoring of all these online form of communication. And this can be done with the support of Europol and with support of specialized law enforcement authorities. Also, we launched the idea to disable search result or search advertisement related search potentially linked to exploitation of Ukrainians in order to reduce the possibility for recruitment of Ukrainian people for this very serious form of exploitation. that in terms of possibility to respond, I see that there is a goodwill from different actors. I think that also you, with your initiative, are contributing to cooperate with the ONLUS organization, with national authorities, by raising attention of society about all these risks. I think that in front of such complex phenomena, the answer can be only a general answer, can be only a comprehensive response, which require initiative for all different actors on the scene, not only law enforcement authorities, not only judicial authorities, not only institutions, but also private sector. I see this as fundamental, more than ever, to have cooperation with the private sector. And I know that you are very active in this direction, so also allow me also to congratulate for your action in this respect. This is, in general terms, what I want to say today in relation to DHB, which is only one, of course, of the criminal threats which have been analyzed in the book. The book is also full of a good example, because we need to also to present things in a realistic way, but also in a positive way. We need to know also a good example where cooperation and coordination was successful. This means that when actors play their role as they should play, they use all the instruments, all the possibilities offered by the current legislation, we can also obtain good results. Allow me to conclude with a good note. I think that yes, it's true that criminal networks are evolving their patterns, remain highly flexible and capable also to escape from justice, but we remain ready, and there is a hope that we can counter them and we can be successful in this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spiezia. You have highlighted so many crucial areas, and I maybe would like to go back to what you said at the very, very beginning, and it was, I have seen a lot. And that's why I wrote the book. You know, and every time I go through the book, and specifically in these times since the war broke out, I go a lot through your book, I have to say. And what I think is the specific value added of, by the way, very user-friendly language, as you said, for the audience that is also not necessarily a legal audience. But the insight that you give about THB, but organized crime as such, as a phenomena that is inherently interdisciplinary. So you basically explain that we need to move on from this thinking in silos and especially like separate bubbles, and seeing things from a more holistic point of view. So I think also your particular insight that you have from, you know, you're originally coming from Italy, coming from Italian anti-mafia prosecution system, the knowledge that you have on specific moduses operandi of mafia type of organized criminal groups, which often in Europe, it's not understood the way it should be, maybe nowadays understood, like you mentioned, for example, in the book, the case of the shooting in the Germany some time ago, and it only then became clear what actually mafia type of an ndrangheta organized criminal groups look like. And I think that this is maybe one of the difficulties in identifying THB also, that is often not seen through the lens of organized crime, as you mentioned. That maybe investigators or the law enforcement don't often realize that criminal groups are constantly in search of new markets to invest in, because the first words that you said in your presentation was that THB is economic activity and it's profit-driven criminal activity. So one would ask, from the operational point of view, why do we have to put mandatory parallel financial investigations linking to trafficking if this is obvious, if this is common sense, that we are talking money? And sometimes it's really, at least to me, from a practitioner's point of view, seems that unless, for example, we do not see, and again, going back now to what you said about slavery, a person chained, chained in a very slavery, technical sense of the word slavery situation, we do not consider that there is action, means, and purposes, and the purpose is exploitation, but we have to be looking at action, means, and purposes as we have them in Palermo or in EU trafficking directive and other legislative instruments. But I'm also very grateful to you for having mentioned the Ukrainian crisis. And that is also, I had the possibility to be at the border twice in March, 1 week once, and then a second occasion, less days. For the first time, I was directly more days, one after another, observing what was going on. It was the second week of the war. And I have to tell you that I completely agree with you on what you say about the new challenges and constant changes of patterns and modus operandi, and how quickly we need to understand what we are looking at. Because if we do not know the patterns and do not know the phenomena, then we do not know what to look at, and we cannot identify. So, for example, I am often asking myself questions: do law enforcement in Central European countries or Eastern European countries, which are the first countries, so now Poland, Slovakia, Moldova, Romania, understand that what Europol says, that organized criminal groups pose unprecedented threat now because they exploit the weaknesses of the systems which are affected by the mass displacement, such as even NGO activities, humanitarian relief and assistance, refugee reception and assistance systems, child protection, as you mentioned, and then economic systems, of course. I mean, I think in 10 minutes, any operator in that area from respectable NGOs would be able to show you 5, 6, 7, 8 Telegram, WhatsApp, other channels or cyber channels where there is ongoing recruitment of people with fake job promises or fake other types of activities, luring the women or luring refugees to come and work in different businesses and giving them the impression that everything is going to be fine. But when you look at those contracts, those are not even legal contracts according to the national law of those countries, and you know that they live in terrible conditions, supposed to work 12 hours a day, and their children are supposed to stay basically waiting for them while their mothers are working in shifts. So this is something that is really happening now. If in an infiltration of organized crime, maybe it tends to be is not understood maybe often, that it tends to be focused on areas which are somehow chosen by these criminal organizations as they have some characteristic of weakness, and I think that the Ukrainian conflict really offers this kind of market to hide criminal activities, so launder some money, make large profits from the people who are in extremely vulnerable situation, and also in a way receive social consent. Maybe an interesting question is also, we have seen some white supremacist, extreme right people infiltrating, for example, voluntary firemen, for example, or civil protection, etc., etc. Yes. So this is also something that it's not that easily understood. But I think the key is that we need to realize that they try to maintain low profile by operation with illegal methods in the legal business. We need to know what we are actually looking for in order to catch those patterns and then pass that information. And maybe we could also tackle a little bit, and I'm going now back to the work that you mentioned in investigations for war crimes, etc. Of course, the civil society element there and contribution there, it's very, very important. But does the civil society know how to work with open source intelligence? Do they know how to record it, how to even gather it in a way so that it can be admissible in the proceedings? These are all questions that I think also bring us more to this fact of understanding how do we cooperate across agency with each other, not only law enforcement and judicial, but also the civil society, so that we even, become stronger, become also flexible in a way, because we can be extremely flexible and extremely targeted if we work well through the law enforcement and civil society coordination. And it can be a complete disaster if that is actually even offering organized crime on a golden plate, situations where they can gain so much profit when we fail. So how would you see this aspect of this cross-sector, multi-agency law enforcement cooperation and civil society cooperation in these two areas, THP and then the war crimes, for example, in this context of a particular Ukrainian war now?
Thank you very much. Allow me to express my appreciation for your comments, very pertinent and very relevant for the topics. And also your first comment, because in my opinion, you made a very correct parallelism between the mafia criminal groups and the THB, which are form of criminal activity performed by organized criminal groups, but they have in common the difficulties to sometimes the difficulties to identify the manifestations, the way through mafia and also THB perpetrators operate. Because one of the question is, if we say and we recognize that THB is one of the most unacceptable form of crime, because it's a way to reduce, to humiliate people, why we don't have enough number of investigations, why we don't prosecute all traffickers? That's another question. And the same can be said for the mafias. See, if the mafia is so powerful, drug, all the criminal organizations like mafia style, why we don't prosecute all of it? The problem is that they have in common the difficulty to identify this criminal phenomena. And that sometimes you have THB, sometimes you have mafias, but you don't see it. You don't see the criminal activity. You have only some external representation of this criminal activity, which are not considered in a proper way, no? And why this happens? For two reasons, according to my experience. First, because of the lack of internal structure of coordination. I see and I recognize how is important the idea of the people who is behind me, the image of Giovanni Falcone, who invented the model of the coordination of investigation at the national level. And it is something that I recognize and I see every day in the relationship with my colleagues. When they see, Filippo, we cannot activate this measure because simply we don't see where is the crime. Okay, they have money laundering activity, they have illegal business activity, they have even drug, but they don't see the criminal organization behind. And this depends on the fact that you miss the whole picture of the criminal phenomena. You can understand the whole situation only if you are able to compose the puzzle and to put all together all the information. And then you see the importance of coordinating structure, not only at your level, but also at the national level. You can have a good infrastructure as we're supposed to be at your level, but you don't have similar activity. And this is especially true for federal system, where if they miss a central structure for coordinating the information. So this is the first question, that the issue that I want to underline. The second one is a second question that you posed concerning, if you can help me for the second question.
Yeah, the second question would be also this cross-sectoral, so from the civil society to law enforcement.
It's completely true that this is a time where a lot of people would like to do something in order to improve the situation, would like to help Ukrainian citizens, Ukrainian institutions, would like to cooperate, would like to do something. There is a risk that we have on the scene a lot of actors without a clear mandate, without a clear delimitation of the scope of the actions. And this can be detrimental for preparing a good case, for building a good prosecution and good trial as well. So more than ever now we need to proceed in a very coordinated way. This was also the message that we sent recently in the context of a operational case, a joint investigation team with Ukrainian, Poland, and also Estonian authorities. You know that also International Criminal Court decided to join this joint investigation team, and they accepted the expertise of Eurojust because they need to proceed in a coordinated way. This can be done only if you have a strategy, only if you have clarity on what crime you want to investigate, what type of evidence you need for that. Of course, in this initial situation, we are just this morning I read that the General Prosecutor of Ukraine is speaking of information for about 9,000 crimes to prosecute you. So you can imagine which type of figures we are talking about, but at least to have some cluster about the type of crimes that you are considering, the region that for which where this crime will be committed, the general classification. I think that we can help these colleagues to create some legal infrastructure where we could classify, we can cluster the evidence, and then we can proceed. This is also an exceptional situation from a legal point of view, because investigations for war crimes or for crime against humanity normally occur after crimes are committed. This is different. This pattern is different because now we are collecting information in real time in respect of the war crime, in respect of the criminal events. That's why we need to be very organized. And also the message also goes towards the NGOs. They are cooperating, they are very active, but they need to be, they have to follow guidelines, they have to follow instructions, otherwise it will be a mess.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. Dr. Spiezia, we run out of the time. We have just one question that I would very quickly want to address in the Q&A box, and it is from Anna Pizza. She's asking, can EU federal agencies access encrypted messaging apps to detect and prevent related organized crime? And if so, how are these agencies working with the countries like the US that does not allow access to the private messaging apps?
Can you repeat the first part of the question, please?
Yes. Can EU federal agencies access encrypted messaging apps to detect and prevent related organized crime? And if they can, how are they working with the US, for example, that does not allow access to private messaging apps?
I think that in this question, we are presupposing institutions that are not yet operating at EU level, because we don't have a federal or judicial or law enforcement level agency able to conduct direct investigation. Even if the mandate of Europol is being expanded recently, and again, it's now also time for further expansion of the Europol mandate. They are always working, supporting the work of national authorities, national law enforcement authorities. This does mean that Europol is not making the work on the ground by analyzing if there is a specific request from a national authorities, by analyzing or by trying to help national authorities by try to decrypt encrypted communications. Normally they have a big expertise in this, but always in cooperation with the national authorities. So the question should be, if I can say, adjust in terms that the role of the EU authorities is not comparable to the federal authority as such. Having said that, we can say that we have some important areas of cooperation with the EU agencies, with the US agency, federal agencies of USA. There is a specific project which is carried out by Europol, which is called Sirius project. It's a project where also Eurojust is participating and contributing to, which is not yet a project where we can directly exchange. It's not a platform which is meant to decrypt communication to exchange the results, but it's a more intended as a sort of repository where all the practitioners, all the competent national authorities can find useful information in order to have cooperation with their counterpart. So they can, for example, find information concerning Facebook, all the Microsoft, all the private internet service providers. They can have also information about the best practice and best experience that have been already tested. So we are gradually moving to a situation where the possibility to work directly on the data will exist, but it's not yet the current situation from the legal point of view. In terms of cooperation with the US authorities, the cooperation, I have to say it's very, very efficient, very fruitful, but you have always to consider the national level. You can never be consider this in terms of cooperation between EU agency and US federal agencies. It's always mediated by the national needs, if I can say.
I think this was so pedagogical for our students originating from the USA, that they also, get the understanding of how we work in Europe. So thank you so much again, Dr. Spiezia, for really having found the time, and we are even beyond. I really, really hope to be able to welcome you also in person in Bologna in the future, and have occasion to continue working together and discussing these. I would like to now to pass the word to Sara to close, and I cordialmente la saluto. Buona serata.
Thank you, Ms. Alessandra, for your sharing. Has been excellent. Allow me only to say that if participants would like to share more comments with me or in relation to some parts of the book, I'm available. You can share my email address and we continue to this dialogue remotely for the moment. Okay.
Thank you so much. Highly appreciate it. Sara, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you both for this very interesting event. This discussion, this dialogue has been fruitful, and I'm sure students will have more questions that we will for sure pass on to you. So thank you again for being with us. Let's see where this federalizing process might be going in terms of justice. It was very, very useful that you mentioned that we are at a different stage in development from an institutional standpoint compared to the US. Thank you so much to both. Thank you for your patience and for being with us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.